My name is Aaron Holt. Earlier this year, when I was 26, I worked the night shift as a security guard at a rural cemetery in central Pennsylvania, a place so old, half the headstones were worn down to blank slabs. The job paid better than anything else around, and I took it because I thought it would be quiet. No customers, no coworkers, just the fog, the cold, and a field full of the dead who were supposed to stay dead. I never believed in ghosts, not once. My philosophy was simple. When you die, that's it. No tunnels, no lights, no spirits lingering, just an off switch. But that was before the cemetery started talking to me. It all began during the spring semester. I'd gone back to school part-time, and I needed a gen ed, so I signed up for a religions course. It was supposed to be an easy A, but something the professor said lodged itself in my brain. Denying the unseen, she said, is the easiest way to get noticed by it. It bothered me more than I expected, especially in the weeks that followed, when I found myself alone at 3 a.m. under a moonless sky with nothing but rows of stone faces watching me. One night, half out of boredom and half because I wanted to prove how full of crap those ghost hunting apps were, I downloaded one. EMF readings, random words, cheap parlor tricks. For the first few days, all it did was buzz and spit out nonsense. Then, on a Wednesday around 3:11 a.m., it said my name. Aaron. Clear, calm, like someone was standing behind me saying it into my ear. I deleted the app immediately, but that didn't stop anything. The next shifts were worse. Whispers in the grass, the shed door swinging open even when I'd padlocked it. The gate somehow unlatched every single morning no matter how hard I secured it. Then my flashlight started moving. I'd set it down, turn my back for a second, and find it lying across the cemetery on a different grave. The lights along the perimeter fence flickered every night at exactly 3:11, like clockwork. I convinced myself it was animals, wiring, pranks, anything but what it felt like. Attention. Then there were the recordings. I'd left my phone on an old headstone one night to capture proof of raccoons or trespassers. But when I played it back, I didn't hear animals. I heard a voice, low, strained, like someone speaking through water. Why do you doubt us? My own footsteps faded, and underneath them came a faint gasp, then the scrape of something dragging itself across dirt. When the whisper came again, it sounded closer to the mic. Too close. I stopped listening after that. Shadows started moving, full silhouettes ducking between stones. A tall figure kneeling among the oldest graves, staying perfectly still until I called out to it. Then it rose, long, thin, wrong. It didn't run or fade. It just wasn't there anymore when I blinked. The knocking started next, on the caretaker's shed, on the roof, on the metal walls, rhythmic, slow, deliberate. I tried to convince myself it was the building settling, but the pattern changed like someone listening to my heartbeat and matching it. Inside the shed, the air smelled like iron, thick and sweet. The lights cut out for a full second. When they returned, the wooden cross on the wall was snapped in half, the break clean like it had been broken over someone's knee. I think that's when I finally became afraid. I dropped the religion course, started skipping my rounds, stopped sleeping. Even after wiping my phone, files kept reappearing. EVP recording saved, every night at 3:11. They were always short, static, faint breathing, sometimes my own voice asking questions I didn't remember saying. What are you? Why me? Show yourself. The last recording had a whisper so close to the microphone it felt like it touched my skin. You called us. I made up my mind to quit. No 2-week notice, no apologies. Just leave the damn place behind. My last night, the fog rolled in thick enough to choke. I walked the path near the oldest graves and saw a glow, like a phone screen, illuminating the back of a crumbling headstone. Cemetery's closed, I called out. No response, just the soft hum of my own breath in the mist. I stepped forward, and right behind me, a voice whispered my name. Not loud, not threatening, almost gentle. When I spun around, nothing was there. But when I looked back, the light behind the grave was gone, replaced by something worse. My grave, a headstone with my full name carved into it. Aaron Holt, 1996 to 2023. Freshly cut, dirt still loose, like it had been placed there minutes before. My flashlight flickered and died. Something grabbed my arm, a cold, clamping grip strong enough to bruise instantly. I didn't look at whatever it was. I just tore myself loose and ran blind through the fog, my lungs burning like the air itself wanted me gone. I made it to my car and locked the doors without thinking. When I looked down, the bruises on my arm formed the shape of fingers, long ones. I didn't return for my last paycheck, didn't clean out my locker, didn't answer the cemetery's emails. That was 3 months ago. I keep telling myself I survived, but whatever followed me out of that place doesn't agree. Because every night at 3:11, my phone lights up again. EV recording saved. And even though I never press play, I hear the whispers anyway. In the walls, in my room, in my reflection. And the worst part, when I look in the mirror now, my reflection grins before I do. My name is Evan Lorne, and I don't know how much time I have before whoever was living in my walls finds me again. I'm writing this now because I need someone to understand what happened, even if I don't survive long enough to explain it myself. Everything began with a leak, a simple one behind the cabinets in my kitchen. When I cut open the drywall to check the pipe, my hand bumped into something hard. I pulled it out thinking it was a tool or a kid's toy, but instead it was a VHS tape wrapped with layers of old electrical tape. Across the front, in faded black marker, someone had written, "Do not watch." The tape felt warm, almost like someone had been holding it moments before I found it. I assumed the last tenants left it behind until I texted my landlord a picture. He replied immediately, "Put it back, I'll handle it." But he never showed up. Not that day, not the next. That night, I heard footsteps in my hallway, slow, dragging footsteps that paced back and forth right outside my bedroom door. I lived alone. There was no mistaking them for settling wood or pipes. These were heavy, deliberate steps. When I opened the door, the hall was empty, but the attic door was cracked open. I hadn't touched it in months. In the morning, the VHS tape wasn't where I had left it. Last I remembered, I'd set it on the kitchen counter. Now it sat perfectly centered on my coffee table. The writing on it was different too, no longer the faded black marker. Now bright red ink read, "Do not watch this. Do not look for me." The layers of tape around it had been neatly removed. Someone had handled it again. Against every instinct I had, I put it in the player. The screen filled with static before slowly clearing to an image of my street. My driveway, my front door. It was filmed from across the street, hidden behind a tree. The recording continued inside my house, my living room, my kitchen, my hallway, each shot filmed through tiny drilled holes in the walls, holes I never noticed, holes that allowed someone to watch me from the inside. I saw myself walking around my own home completely unaware of the camera inches from my head, just on the other side of the drywall. Then the footage cut to black. When the picture returned, it was no longer recorded footage, it was live. I realized I was watching myself sitting in my living room, staring at the TV. The camera angle was behind me, close behind me. The hairs rose on my neck when I noticed something. The camera was inside the air vent directly behind the couch. I froze when I heard footsteps in my house again, this time clearly coming from the attic. Against my better judgment, I climbed the ladder, gripping a kitchen knife so tightly my wrist trembled. As soon as my head rose into the attic, the smell hit me. Rotting meat, something coppery. My flashlight beam landed on a pile of bones, animal bones, cleaned and stacked neatly in a corner. Next to them was a fresh trail of blood smeared across the insulation. As I followed it, the light revealed a single human tooth lying on the attic floor, clean, fresh, recently pulled out. Before I could react, the floor creaked behind me and a deep voice muttered, "You shouldn't be here." A massive weight slammed into my back, smashing my head against the rafters. I felt something sharp graze my neck. Warm blood trickled down my spine. I swung the knife behind me and felt it hit flesh, followed by a low grunt as something scrambled into the darkness. It moved unnaturally fast, more like an injured animal than a person. I fell down the attic ladder and hit the floor hard, knocking the wind out of me. When I regained consciousness hours later, the house was torn apart. Cabinets ripped off hinges, furniture shredded, walls gouged open. In the kitchen, the VHS tape was shoved deep into the wall cavity where I'd found it. Next to it lay the knife I had used, caked in thick, dark blood that wasn't mine. On the drywall beside the hole, smeared in blood, someone had written, "Stop watching." I left that night, packed nothing. I didn't care. I moved to a basement apartment across town and tried to convince myself I was safe. But last night, in the quiet of my new bedroom, I heard faint scratching inside the wall. Then a slow dragging sound, like fingernails searching for a weak spot in the drywall. A whisper followed, muffled but unmistakably human. "You left the tape behind, Evan." I don't think he ever lived in my house. I think he lives in the walls. And I think he learned to follow me. I moved into the duplex at the end of Ridgewood Lane because it was cheap. Cheaper than it should have been. But I told myself I'd just gotten lucky. New town, new job, new start. The place wasn't pretty, but I could fix that. I've always been good with repairs. The first couple weeks were ordinary. I'd work all day, come home, and tear the place apart with tools until midnight. By the time my head hit the pillow, I was too exhausted to care about anything except sleep. So when I heard that faint tapping in the vents, I barely paid attention. Just a tiny metallic tick, tick, tick. I figured it was air pressure, loose screws, something dumb. Old houses make old noises. But after a few nights, the sound changed. It wasn't random anymore. It had timing, a pattern. Tick, tick, tick. Pause. Tick, tick, tick. Like knuckles drumming through the metal. One night I put my ear to the vent. The moment I got close, the noise stopped. Completely. Like it knew I was listening. I shoved a towel over the vent and tried to sleep anyway. Didn't help. By week 3, I was starting to dread the nights. I'd lie in the dark, staring at the ceiling fan, waiting for that sound to start. Sometimes it came from the vent. Sometimes from the wall near my closet. Once, and I'm still not sure about this, I heard it beneath my bed. But then one night, everything went silent. For the first time in days, I actually relaxed. I lay there smiling like an idiot because the quiet felt unreal. No tapping. No scratching. Nothing. I drifted off relieved. And then, knock. I shot upright. It wasn't from my room. It came from the living room. Another knock. Lower, harder, more deliberate. There wasn't supposed to be anything above that room except insulation and a shallow crawl space. But something was moving up there. Slowly, purposefully. I grabbed a flashlight and did a quick walk-through, pretending I wasn't scared. I didn't find anything. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was still inside the walls, following me from room to room, listening. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I tried to distract myself by finishing some renovation. I decided to rip down the old paneling near the kitchen. Cheap wood, easy job, should have taken 20 minutes. But behind the paneling, I found something I hadn't seen in the walkthrough. A small square outline. Painted over, almost invisible. A maintenance hatch. I hesitated. Something deep in my gut whispered that I shouldn't open it. But curiosity won. It always does. I wedged a screwdriver in and pried the panel loose. A cold draft rushed out. Stale, damp air that smelled like rust and dirt. My flashlight cut through the darkness. There was a narrow tunnel behind the wall, barely tall enough for a person to crawl through. Dust everywhere, cobwebs hanging from the beams. But the thing that made me step back was the bedding, a filthy blanket, a flattened pillow, 2 empty water bottles, a stack of canned food. A plastic fork with dried something, sauce or blood, crusted on it. Someone had been living in there recently. And right in the center of it all, like it was waiting for me, sat a notebook, black cover, frayed spine, pages swollen with moisture. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Entry 1, he's loud, always hammering, always changing things. He should ask first. I felt my blood go cold. I flipped ahead. Entry 4, he doesn't know this is my place. I've kept it clean for years. Entry 8, he sleeps too heavy. He won't hear me if I check. I slammed the notebook shut, my flashlight flickered. In the far end of the crawl space, something shifted. A body-sized silhouette. Sliding quietly deeper into the darkness, I dropped the hatch, ran to my room, and shoved my dresser in front of the door. That night the tapping came back, harder, angrier. Right behind the wall where the hatch was sealed, I sat on my bed, knees to my chest, listening to each thud vibrate through the drywall. At 3:17 a.m., the tapping stopped. I didn't sleep. In the morning, I tried calling the landlord. Voicemail. I tried again, voicemail. I considered calling the police, but what would I say? Hey, someone's living in my walls and knocking at me at night. They'd laugh. Or worse, they'd come inside, look around and not find anything. Then I'd still be alone with it. So I stayed stupid. But I did, and that night everything escalated. I was brushing my teeth when I heard a new sound, breathing. It wasn't mine, and it wasn't coming from the vents or anywhere distant. It was right behind the bathroom mirror, a slow inhale followed by a raspy exhale. I backed out of the bathroom, staring at the mirror as if it might burst outward, but nothing happened. Instead, a low, breathy voice, distorted by wood and metal, whispered, "Stop changing my house." Panic hit me instantly, and I ran into my bedroom and slammed the door. For the next 15 minutes, I heard soft, bare footsteps padding along the walls as they circled the room, traced the perimeter, paused at my door, and then turned into long, deliberate scratches that dragged down the wood like a warning. I stayed frozen until sunrise. I should have left immediately, but the stubborn, curious part of me wanted answers. Later that afternoon, I set up a single camera pointed toward the maintenance hatch and prepared myself to watch the live feed from my phone through the night. For hours, nothing happened. 1 a.m., 1:43, 2:12, until at 2:48, the hatch opened slowly, silently, in a way that suggested whoever was inside knew exactly how to move without making a sound. A thin, pale hand appeared first, veins raised against the skin, followed by a shoulder, torso, and head. A man, or what was left of one, crawled out like a spider unfolding, his limbs far too long and his neck bent at an angle that looked permanently broken. He stood with his back to the camera before turning around, revealing a face smeared with dust and something darker, a crooked nose, and wide, unblinking eyes that darted around the room as if tracking invisible insects. He looked disturbingly excited, as though he'd been waiting for the moment he could emerge. Then he walked out of frame and headed straight toward my bedroom. My heart nearly ruptured. I shut off the camera feed, grabbed the bat I kept under my bed, and pressed my ear to the door. At first there was only silence, but then I heard a scrape, something dragging across the hallway floor, not like footsteps, but like a body pulling itself along. A moment later, right outside my door, came the whisper, "You changed everything." The doorknob twisted, and I gripped the bat so tight my hands went numb. It twisted again, harder this time, rattling violently before suddenly stopping. The silence that followed was worse than the sounds, and eventually the thing moved away, crawling instead of walking. I didn't sleep until the sun came up. By morning I was done. I packed a bag and headed for my car, but before leaving completely, I forced myself to watch the footage again. In doing so, I noticed something I'd missed. After the man or creature walked down the hallway, he stopped, turned, and stared directly into the camera for a full 30 seconds. It wasn't because he saw or heard it. It was because he already knew it was there. His smile grew slowly across his face, wide and toothy and impossibly wrong. And then he mouthed something. I zoomed in, 4 words, "I live everywhere now." I dropped my phone and ran. I never went back for anything, not the furniture, not the keys, not even a proper goodbye to the landlord. But 2 days later, the landlord texted me to say, "Duplex not available anymore. Renovations pending. Sorry for the inconvenience." Renovations, sure. I still don't know who or what lived inside those walls or how long he'd been there. But ever since I left, I occasionally hear that same tapping at night, whether I'm in a hotel, at a friend's house, anywhere. A quiet pattern. Tick, tick, tick. Pause. Tick, tick, tick. Something knocking from inside the walls. And each time I hear it, I remember the words he mouthed to the camera. "I live everywhere now."